Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Charlotte Dobre, and today we are going to try to answer the question, was Jesus Christ a real person? This topic is quite controversial because the Christian community believes that yes, he was a real person. However, those who are not Christian might wonder, was Jesus really the Son of God? Or just a human being like you or me? Could Jesus really perform miracles? Or was his life an elaborate lie? Did Jesus Christ even exist at all? We at LBQ do not wish to offend anyone. We simply want to unearth the truth. I'm going to give you all the facts right now on Life's Biggest Questions. I would like to start off this video by saying, nowhere except in the Bible is there an official record of Jesus Christ. There are other historians who wrote about Jesus, but this was many years after he died. Hundreds of years to be exact. Not even a record of his death exists, which is odd. Someone as important as Jesus should have had a recorded death, shouldn't he? There are those who believe that Jesus Christ was actually an elaborate Roman conspiracy. Joseph Atwill, a controversial biblical scholar, believes that the New Testament was written by 1st century Roman aristocrats, and they completely made up the story of Jesus Christ. So why would the Romans want to invent a new religion? Well, according to Atwill, Christianity may be considered a religion, but it was actually developed and used as a system of mind control to produce slaves that believed that God condoned their slavery. Jewish sects at the time were awaiting the arrival of their Messiah in Palestine. Jewish sects were a huge problem for the Romans, so they decided to turn to another type of warfare, psychological warfare. This is just a conspiracy theory, but I thought it important to include it in this video. Alright, let's look at some evidence that Jesus Christ existed. In 70 AD, the Romans invaded and destroyed Jerusalem and slaughtered most of its inhabitants. Entire cities were burned, and likely so did much of the evidence of Jesus' existence, if there was any. Perhaps some of the best evidence that Jesus existed are several ancient manuscripts found in the 18th and 20th centuries. Archaeologists have also come across several relics and places that coincide with the New Testament accounts of Jesus. Before the 20th century, there was very little hard evidence that Jesus actually existed. But in 1961, several artifacts were found, and one bore the name Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea, who was the Roman governor that was a central figure in the trial that eventually led to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. This artifact has been proven to be 100% authentic, meaning Pontius was a real person. Okay, so we know Pontius existed, but does that mean that Jesus existed? It was long believed that Jesus' hometown of Nazareth was not a real place during his lifetime, but clay shards were found in Nazareth in 2009 that confirmed that it did exist during the time when Jesus was supposed to have lived. But again, how is it that someone as important as Jesus does not have documentation backing up his existence? Well, that is because there is very little documentation available for anyone during the time Jesus lived. Even for the great Roman leader Julius Caesar, not a lot of documentation exists that confirms he actually lived. Yet no historian questions the existence of Julius Caesar. There were two early Roman historians, Tacitus and Suetonius, who wrote of Jesus Christ, acknowledging him as a real person. Jewish historians like Flavius Josephus also made references to Jesus Christ. In addition, there are several pagan writers who also mention Jesus. So does all of this mean that Jesus was a real person? Yes. Yes, it does. A man named Jesus did live during the 1st century AD, and thousands of Christians in that time period, including the 12 apostles, were willing to give their lives as martyrs for Jesus Christ. Would they really have done so if he were not a real person? That's highly unlikely. Jesus was a real person. But does that mean that he was the Son of God who walked the earth performing miracles, was crucified, and then rose from the dead? Hello, and welcome back to another Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that asks the fundamental questions of life. I'm Charlotte Dobre, and today we're going to try to answer the question, does the devil exist? Is the devil a real being, or is he a metaphor meant to represent evil? More than 70% of all Americans believe the devil does exist, and ultimately 1/3 of them believe that Satan's power will eventually lead to an apocalypse. There is a lot of evil in this world, but is this evil the result of a person's bad choices, or is there someone or something influencing them? The Bible does inform us of the existence of Satan. It explains that Satan was once created as one of God's most powerful angelic beings, but was thrown out of heaven for rebelling against God. Satan then made it his purpose to oppose God and lead the people of earth to oppose God as well, eventually overthrowing him. Satan exists in the invisible spirit realm. So is the devil really that guy in the red suit with a pitchfork? According to the Bible, a cherub is up to 18 feet in height, with 8-foot long wings. Beneath their wings are human-like hands that could be used to carry things. The New Testament describes a similar creature with 6 wings, but with the face of a lion, an ox, a man, and an eagle. Satan is also described as being perfect in beauty, being adorned with all kinds of precious stones. It is also possible for the devil to take the form of another. In the Garden of Eden, he transformed into a snake to tempt Eve. The concept of a supernatural evil being is not only present in Christianity, it is represented in many cultures. The earliest cave paintings, which were created thousands of years before Christ, depict half-animal, half-man figures. Ancient Egyptians also had a devil-like figure. They believed that when you died, you were presented to the gods, and the good in your life had to outweigh the bad, and if it didn't, you were condemned to an eternity of darkness. Satan in Islamic tradition is known as Iblis. He is not a fallen angel, he's a demon who corrupts humanity. Just like there are people who worship God, there are people who worship the devil. Satanism is a group of ideological and philosophical beliefs based on the character of Satan. In the Middle Ages, it was believed that heretical Christian sects and the Knights Templar performed satanic rituals. Belief in the power of witches led to the persecution of thousands of alleged witches across Europe and North America. Yet in almost all of these cases, there was no hard proof that the accused had been practicing Satanism. Well, what about the people who sell their soul to the devil? There are many notable people who are said to have sold their soul to the devil in exchange for something else. Cornelius Agrippa, the most influential writer of the Renaissance esoterica, was considered a musician, occult writer, astrologer, and alchemist. He wrote 3 books on the occult that are still in use today. He was said to have sold his soul to the devil. Giuseppe Tartini was an Italian composer and violinist. In his lifetime, he wrote nearly 400 works. His most famous piece is called the Devil's Trill Sonata, and he allegedly got the idea from a dream he had. Tartini said that he dreamed the devil appeared to him and asked him to be his servant. At the end of their lessons, Tartini gave the devil his violin, and the devil played the sonata. When Tartini awoke from the dream, he wrote down the sonata, trying to recreate what he had heard in the dream. Even though the sonata was praised, Tartini said his sonata was nowhere near as amazing as what he had heard the devil play. And Robert Johnson, the great American blues musician and one of the greatest musicians of all time, was said to have met the devil at a crossroads. The devil tuned his guitar and made him a master of his instrument. Johnson encouraged these rumors, alleging that he did in fact make a deal with the devil. Perhaps some of the best evidence for the existence of the devil are stories of real-life possessions that defy rational explanations. Jesus Christ himself was one of the most famous exorcists. The first mention of him expelling a spirit is in the book of Mark. The practice of exorcism has existed since the beginning of religion and is performed by every major religion, not just Christians. Buddhists, Hindus, Islamists, and Judaists all practice their own form of exorcism. It involves driving out supposed demons from an individual. Rational witnesses who have been present at exorcisms have seen terrifying things. According to the Christian perspective, the most common signs of possession include superhuman strength, speaking languages the possessed does not know, limb contortion, and premonitions or clairvoyance. There are logical explanations for symptoms of possession. The scientific explanation for superhuman strength is this: when we feel fear, our bodies produce excess adrenaline. The adrenaline glands pump cortisol and adrenaline into our blood, which supplies muscles with more oxygen, releasing more energy. Limb contortion can also be explained through biology. Our limbs can twist, we just aren't used to seeing it. What about knowledge of foreign languages? It has something to do with how memories are stored. The brain picks up things subconsciously, including languages. The phenomenon is called xenoglossy and has been studied extensively. But science fails to explain many things. What about evil? There is definitely evil in the world. Since there is evil, does that mean the devil is the one driving that evil? The presence of evil in people would also suggest there is, perhaps, an unknown evil force in direct opposition with God. Evil can sometimes be so strong, it can completely consume people. So then, does the devil exist? Seeing as there is no tangible proof that the devil exists, it is assumed that the devil was made up, almost as an excuse for bad behavior. Perhaps the devil is just another representation of us, in our selfish nature. In short, the devil is as real as you believe him to be, but unless some concrete proof emerges, it is assumed that the devil cannot be real. However, when renowned author C.S. Lewis was asked if he believed in the devil, he replied, "I am not particular about the hoofs and horns, but in other respects, my answer is yes, I do." That is all for now. Thank you for tuning into Life's Biggest Questions. Tell us, do you believe the devil exists? Leave us your comments down below. Don't forget to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe to Life's Biggest Questions.
Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that looks to answer exactly those. Thank you to all of you that have tuned in so far and for the continued support of our growing channel. Today we are going to be examining the ultimate question: is God real? At Life's Biggest Questions, we mean no offense, but we do encourage conversation and debate. And above all, we encourage people to always keep questioning, even when they think they already have the answers. In this video, we are going to discuss the creation of the Earth and the wider universe, as well as life on Earth and the human condition. On top of that, we're going to be discussing religion as varying concepts. There are 4,200 religions in the world, most of which stem back to 5 wider religions. Almost all religions put God at the center of their faith. Those that don't are exceptionally interesting, but we won't be discussing them as part of this because of the nature of the title. Before we address the already problematic issue of the sheer number of belief systems in relation to our question, let us first look at what the majority of these religions agree on. Christians, Sikhs, Muslims, Jews all believe that the universe was made by a grand creator. Something that divides a lot of these religions within themselves, as well as believers and non-believers, is the Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory is used by some people on both sides of the debate as an example of why God is both real and not real. The Big Bang Theory, now widely acknowledged as the most probable beginning of our universe, refers to a pinpointed beginning to our existence. We do not know what caused it, but all of a sudden the universe was born as an extremely high density and extremely high temperature pinprick that quickly expanded and expanded, large enough to cool and for atoms to form. Using Albert Einstein's theory of relativity and Edwin Hubble's microscope observation that galaxies are moving away from one another, we have been able to decipher that since the beginning of time as we know it, the Big Bang, the universe has been continuing to expand. Of course, not all religions are happy with this, as it calls into question some of their earlier beliefs outlined in various ancient scriptures, which they hold pretty dear. But for others, this is comforting because it means that the exact start point to the beginning of everything can be identified, and if there was a bang, so to speak, it must have been created by something bigger than the universe itself. Scientists have gone into further detail about the creation, suggesting the first 380,000 years of the universe were dark, as it was simply too hot for light to shine. After all those years, matter cooled enough for atoms to form during what is known as the era of recombination, which, according to NASA, resulted in a transparent electrical neutral gas which caused a flash of light during the Big Bang. This is detectable today as cosmic microwave background radiation. If we forget the timescale for a moment, this sounds very familiar to the Christian ear. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Although one could argue that focusing on that sentence alone is somewhat selective. The Quran is also pretty affirmative of the Big Bang in parts. Although it is never fully mentioned, a period of existence before the Earth began is noted, with many Islamic leaders acknowledging the Big Bang as consistent with what God relayed to Muhammad. Atheists, on the other hand, see the Big Bang and similar scientific discoveries like shoestring theory and M theory as proof that there is no God. Many believers tend to regard their religious scripture highly, and many, but not all, use only words found in said scripture to back up their beliefs, rather than measurable evidence. Everything we have discovered in the last 100 years or so has shaken religion to its very core. Hubble's discovery that galaxies were hurtling apart and the ability to measure that cosmic microwave background information has provided solid evidence that the Big Bang happened, which is a blow to some religions that refuse to acknowledge this. Atheists somehow seem to think that the fact that some religions have been exposed to contain a few scientific flaws means that God is not real, but that isn't quite accurate. If we can agree that there was a Big Bang, a beginning point if you will, all of the laws on the Earth and the universe beyond tell us that something can't come from nothing. This is the second law of thermodynamics. There must have been a catalyst or trigger to the start. What or who was the catalyst? Or are we to deny every law of physics and say that all of the matter that emerged in the Big Bang simply came from nowhere? But if it did come from somewhere, then where? Was it God? Was it, like is hinted in Buddhism, the result of something that came to an end before we began, with us rising from its ashes? If it was indeed divine intervention, then who or what is the focus of that divinity? Are they God? If so, are they alone? If God is alone, then why do countless religions refer to the creator as a he, when the genderization in itself causes a pretty big issue? Is God genderless, therefore living beyond the need to be defined by their own ability to reproduce? Okay, Okay, so before things get too heavy, let's just say that we have summarized one of the main arguments between believers and non-believers. A never-ending argument which stems down to the rule that you cannot create something from nothing. But if something created something else, that in turn must have had a creator. Extending back, there are two probabilities. The Big Bang either just happened or it was ignited. We simply cannot say. Let's look at life closer to home and one of the major domestic blows delivered to religious arguments for God. Religion is an issue we have come across before, with so many varying strands of belief, meaning that not all believers can be right, so to speak. An early issue with the Bible, for example, is the creation of Adam and Eve, the whole Garden of Eden exchange, and the suggestion that the God made every animal we know today in its fully developed form. A nice story, but quite a tall tale. What we now know and can now prove was that there were organisms and animals that predate human existence by millions of years. Why do religious books such as the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, and the Quran not mention dinosaurs, for example? Thousands of dinosaur bones have been found in North America, China, and Argentina. We have found bones dating back 68 million years and fossils over 2 million years old. We can even see their bones hanging in museums for ourselves. Speaking of bones and fossils, we have enough of them to all but prove evolution, a theory developed from Charles Darwin's concept of survival of the fittest and changed through adaptation. We can physically see that whales descended from land mammals. It isn't over either. Species are continuing to evolve. Humans are getting taller, and moths have literally changed colour since the Industrial Revolution. The evidence of dinosaurs picks holes in religion, as does scientific support for evolution. But what may come as a blow to religion isn't necessarily a knock to the existence of God. Many modern believers will take religious scripture with a more light-hearted approach and accept them as guidelines of how to interpret their faith. In fact, some find science to be a reaffirmation of their beliefs as the miracles of the universe and life on Earth are brought to light. Many see the perfect conditions under which the Big Bang was triggered, as well as the evolution and the ideal conditions of our Earth that allow life to flourish, as evidence of intelligent design. Indeed, many see the apparent laws of physics as further confirmation that rules have been set in biology, cosmology, and the universe as we know it. Wasn't our path to existence just all too perfect? Change a few tiny factors, for example the ideal position of Jupiter in our solar system, which attracts many asteroids away from the Earth, and it all very well could have not happened. Interestingly, celebrated 19th and 20th century scientist Albert Einstein closely followed the views of 17th century Dutch philosopher Baruch Spinoza. He believed the notion of God to be an expression of the underlying unity of the universe. Perhaps the God we speak of is the harmony of the perfect laws of physics, rather than a higher being. Is God particles and energy that make up the world we know and the rules we live by? Another strand to the God debate very much concerns the human condition. Many argue that if God were real, why would he not prevent disasters and protect innocent people? Where was God during the Boxing Day tsunamis of 2004? Where was God during the 2 world wars? Where was God when the atomic bombs were dropped? And where was he during 9/11? Where is God now, with the country of Syria beyond breaking point and ISIS enacting deplorable massacres? If God was real, why would he let people suffer in such intense and cruel ways? Those who believe strongly in religious scripture will tell you that God allows suffering because we must know suffering to know love, or that it's all part of God's plan. Others who argue for God as a force of science say, sure, there may be a rule setter, a creator behind the Big Bang, but they are so huge and so inconceivable to us that perhaps they wouldn't concern themselves with our earthly issues, way too small and insignificant for them to even see. On the flip side of murder and genocide, we have supposed miracles. Our whole existence could be considered a miracle of sorts, in that we don't yet know how to explain what happened. By all accounts, the Big Bang, evolution, all of it seems miraculous. Miracles can be considered both divine or spontaneous depending on your outlook. Many who feel the presence of God in their lives, who see miraculous things happen to them and their family members, will be convinced to the point of almost proof as to the existence of a guardian angel or divine power. Many who promote science over miracles will instead say that miracles are events that have explanations, we just don't know them yet. For example, Isaac Newton noted how gravity gravity from the sun keeps planets in their orbits. What he could not explain, aka how those planets got into orbits in the first place and all rotated around the sun in the same direction, he put down to a divine miracle. He said, this most beautiful system of the sun, planets and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. However, centuries later, Pierre Laplace was able to fill in the gaps as to the mechanics of the universe. There are, of course, still some things we cannot explain, but for some, that does not mean that there isn't an explanation. No scientist will ever claim to know all of the answers to the questions posed by the universe. However, they will actively seek to find them over time. Indeed, science is always proving and disproving itself in a constant quest for the truth. That said, while some are staunch in their belief systems, others do shift over time. The Vikings, for example, believed in a wolf god who ate the sun. That was their explanation for a solar eclipse. When they assembled to throw spears into the sky and shout war cries at the wolf, they noticed the sun once again reveal itself. Not realizing solar eclipses are temporary, they hailed themselves defenders of the earth. In a time gone by, there were many who believed the stars in the sky were chinks in the floor of heaven. We now know otherwise. So, is God real, or are we just waiting for a better explanation? Finally, I want to return to religion as a notion, and this is the crux of the God issue for many people. Why are there so many religions? How can just one group be right and so many millions more wrong? Why have so many people interpreted God in so many ways? If God supposedly spoke to some X number of people millennia years ago, why didn't he speak to many people at once with a clear defining path rather than speaking to individuals who were then supposed to just get along? He would have saved thousands of years of ambiguity. Religions, by and large, but of course not all, refer back to scripture written thousands of years ago for their guidelines on how to interpret God, and often how to interact with others. This is a big issue for many. We, in the space of the past 10 minutes, have heavily discussed how our expanding understanding of the world and universe as we know it has developed our theories on life and existence as the centuries go by. Why then would religion not seek the same understanding? Why would many blindly stick to what many others consider to be outdated information? It ought not make God any less real to them, but they may have a better understanding of their relationship to the divine. Many arguments suggest that religion, as schools of thought, were created to control people by abusing their faiths. Interestingly, when we examine the core values of religion, we see very similar themes: the need to be a good person, helping others, and loving others. But books are turning people against one another en masse. How can that be holy in any way? Knowing what we know now, isn't adhering strictly to religion an act of self-flagellation? Wouldn't God, the creator, simply want us to be good and be kind? Perhaps religion and faith should be separated because they are not the same. A person can believe in God or be open to the prospect without confining themselves to the rules of religion that are so often flawed. So how do we go about answering this question? The ultimate question. Well, first, we must remove religion from the question. It is too divisive to be even considered in the black and white matter of belief and non-belief. So, is God real? Scientific discovery has come a long way in uncovering many mysteries of our past, as well as determining some of the likely outcomes of our future. However, there are so many unanswered questions about the universe, its creation, our Earth's creation, and why the laws of physics are indeed laws. Since our inception, our progression as a human race has hinged on people constantly asking questions and striving for the answers. We are constantly in a state of proving and disproving what we already know. Is God real? I honestly do not know. If a God does exist, perhaps their existence and being is simply beyond our imagination. To unquestionably disbelieve is as blindsided as unquestionably believing. As time goes on, our knowledge of creation is becoming clearer, and perhaps one day we will know the answer one way or another. It is okay to not totally understand everything. After all, we are trying to determine the entire universe, which is something that not even the top brains in the world can do. It is not okay, however, to stop asking questions. You should not believe something because someone told you to. You should not act in a certain way because there is a book that says that that's how things are done. Be alert, be curious, consider why you believe what you do, and only then will we, as a human race, be able to continue to work towards the answer of life's biggest questions. I I'm Rebecca Felgate, thank you for sticking with me throughout an epic video. Of course, long as it may have been, we will have only touched on the surface of this topic, which we could continue, like man, to debate for millennia.
The underworld, the inferno, Hades, Sheol, the land of the dead, and hell. It has many names, but hell is regarded as a place where evil souls go to be punished for all eternity. But what if hell really existed? What if, when you die, you really could be sent to a fiery inferno for the rest of time? Today, Life's Biggest Questions asks, what if hell was real? Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that asks the fundamental questions of life and occasionally answers them too. I'm Charlotte Dobre, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe for more daily questions, and don't forget to stick around until the end of the video where we respond to users' comments. No one knows for sure what happens to your soul when you die. Ideally, it would be nice to think that your soul would end up in a better place, a happier place. But what about the souls that did not deserve to be sent to a happier place? Where would they be sent? Many civilizations across the world throughout history believed that hell really existed. The Greeks called it Hades, the Egyptians called it the Lake of Fire, the Celtics called it Ufern, Jews called it Sheol, and Christians called it hell. There are various depictions of hell across many religions, but hell typically is presented as a place that exists in another dimension beneath the surface of the earth. There are often entrances to hell from the land of the living. According to the Roman Catholic Church, one finds oneself in hell as a result of dying in mortal sin, without repenting and accepting God's merciful love, becoming eternally separated from Him by one's free choice. It's believed by most that our modern concept of hell was put forward by 14th century writer Dante Alighieri, whose epic poem Divine Comedy had a part called Inferno, which describes the circles of hell. Alighieri didn't get his idea of hell from the Bible. It's likely that he got it from various myths, Norse, Greek, and Germanic, whose spirituality were eventually replaced by Christianity. According to Christianity, punishment in hell corresponds to the sins that were committed during life. Damned souls suffer for each sin that was committed, so if you were especially naughty when you were alive, you would be punished, essentially tortured the longest and the harshest. There is no escape from hell. And Alighieri described hell as a very awful place. No surprise there. He said, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Hell is a place of eternal pain, where people are chased by wasps and hornets, and maggots and worms feed on the blood, pus, and tears of sinners." Okay, that's not the least bit frightening at all. And what I just told you was just the beginning. This was Alighieri's description of hell's vestibule, another word for a lobby. There are also other areas of hell, circles, where various sinners are sent. For example, people who committed suicide are turned into ugly trees, and they spend eternity being eaten by hungry birds. If hell was real and people knew it, you can bet your bottom dollar that we would see a lot less crime being committed in the world. If people feared repercussion for their misdeeds, they would feel less inclined to commit those misdeeds in the first place. Sure, while you're alive, you could get away with murder if you hide it well, but the idea of your soul spending an eternity in a fiery pit being poked with iron sticks and being chased by wasps, yeah, that would make people think a lot harder about the bad choices they make. I really hate wasps. But not everyone would be so inclined to be good if hell was real. If hell was real, we can reasonably assume that the devil is also real. The devil is the ultimate personification of evil, and he is present in many cultures and religious traditions. The devil has many faces and many names: Lucifer, Satan, Mephistopheles. The devil is a fallen angel who is either blue, black, or red. Most of the time the devil has horns on his head and resembles either a goat or a ram, with the ears, nose, and canines of a pig. Definitely not cute, but kind of resembling what I look like without makeup. If the devil was real, perhaps that means that it would be possible to strike a deal with the devil, if you could stand the sight of him. We all hear of tales of people selling their soul to the devil for one reason or another, usually for great talent, favors, or fame. Legendary blues musician Robert Johnson claims that he met Satan at a crossroads and gave him his soul in exchange for becoming a master of the guitar. Then there was Giuseppe Tartini, Venetian violinist and composer, who believed that his Devil's Trill Sonata was inspired by the devil visiting him in a dream. Pope Sylvester II, who according to legend made a pact with a female demon called Meridiana, who appeared when Pope Sylvester was rejected by his earthly love. It is said that with the help of this demon, as well as playing dice with the devil, he won the papacy. If it really was true that you could make a deal with the devil to get practically anything you wanted, what's to stop people from taking advantage of that power? You could sell your soul to the devil in order to win a war, to become president, to become famous, or to win the love of someone. If this is true, there would be a substantial amount of people striking deals with the devil, which would give him considerable power. But I mean, I really want to be famous, so That doesn't sound so bad, does it? I'm gonna wrap up this video on a lighter note by saying that if hell was real, then it also can be reasonably assumed that heaven is real, and so is God. The devil is, after all, a fallen angel. Where did the devil fall from if not from heaven? If God and heaven were real, that would mean that it's entirely possible that your soul could ascend to a better place. It would also mean that God really does decide our fate, and we exist because of some divine intervention. But now I open up the question to you, dear subscribers: what if hell was real? Write your responses down in the comments. For now, I'm gonna respond to some comments from my last video, what really happened to Michael Jackson. Don Vito said, plot twist, Charlotte Dobre is Michael Jackson. Last time I checked, I'm not Michael Jackson. If I were, I would be a far better dancer. Zachary Gonzalez said, you rule, chick, and sound beautiful and intelligent. Well, you sound very intelligent as well. Masca said, I do love this channel. Is that the voice of the Potato Queen? Hail. Yes, it is. Welcome, my little spud. For those that don't know, I also host another channel called Inform Overload. We do the news and we make it entertaining. Come on over and hang out, why don't ya? Jack Noga said, I have a question. What would the world be like if religion never happened? That's a pretty difficult question to answer because there's always been some form of religion or spirituality. Going back to the early caveman days, I would imagine that without religion, our society would be much far less along. Entire cultures wouldn't have adopted certain ideals or built certain structures in an effort to please the gods or God. But perhaps that's a topic idea for another Life's Biggest Questions. We have reached the end of the video. Thanks so much for sticking around.